This is the art of network engineering, where technology meets the human side of IT. Whether you're scaling networks, solving problems, or shaping your career, we've got the insights, stories, and tips to keep you ahead in the ever-evolving world of networking. Welcome to the Art of Network Engineering podcast. My name is Andy Lapteff, and I have two of some of my favorite people that I know. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I wish I had more of these people in my life. Well, let's start from my left to right. Scott Robohn. How are you, Scott?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's really good to see you both.
For people living under a rock, Scott, what do you do? Who's this guy?
Internet plumber, 35 years plus in the industry. I've been on the operator side. I've been on the vendor side. Don't hold it against me. Last 3 years, I've been doing my own consulting work. Gave me flexibility to help found something called the Network Automation Forum and my consulting company. So I'm a pretty lucky individual.
Okay. Mr. Michael Bushong. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Andy. Hey, Scott. Nice to see you guys again. Before you have to ask me for what I do data center things at Nokia. I've been on the vendor side for a long time. I spend most of my time in, strategy and product, and then most of that in operations and, general disruption. And I think for today, the part that's important, I've led large teams for a large number of years. And so I have a particularly corporate point of view when it comes to what we do, why we do it, and how we should communicate to the people who make it all happen.
Mike stole my job for me. He's so good. So the segue into the topic, if you listen to the show, you've probably heard me. I'm kind of going through a journey of, and I've been doing this my whole life, but I'm always trying to improve, question my assumptions, and be better, right? I think that's what we're all here to do. This past 2 years, I guess, last year I looked long and hard at my beliefs around network automation and my very public displeasure around network automation. And I whined and screamed and bitched about it long enough and realized that nobody cared. And it's an important skill and it's here to stay. And
that's not true. There are people who cared. And that's how you really got on my radar. Can I tell you?
Right.
You know the story, right?
Go ahead.
When you were early on in your, why am I even bothering to learn this automation stuff? It's like, I need to get to know him. And there was a serpentine path that actually got us connected. And I'm really glad you complained about it. I really am, because that's how we got here tonight. So,
all right. So, accidental lesson: if you have any kind of public persona and you can complain about things, you might come up on important people's radar. So, take that for what it's worth. But I joke. So, full circle, I've come around on network automation for very personal reasons that I'm actually going to speak about at AutoCon 4. So, I'm looking forward to that. But where we are today is I didn't like network automation. I cried and complained about it a long time. I learned some lessons, and now I am very much bought into the value of network automation, because if I can do 3 hours of work in 30 seconds with some automation, that seems pretty intuitive to me, right? But again, not why we're here. So that's been a journey for me. And what I've been thinking recently, another thing I'd like to look at personally, which I think is common among the engineering folks, is a disdain for how can I put it? Company all hands, quarterly this, town hall that. And this isn't only where I work now. This has been every company I've ever worked for as long as I can remember. And a couple of smart people, Yvonne Sharp being one of them, she's publicly said in quite a few places the value of learning the business, how the business people talk, what's important to them. As an engineer, let's say, if you want to get things done, there's you have to know the parlance and their values. And if you want to get things done, like maybe automation or anything else. So anyway, but I still struggle with this. Recently I've been trying to be more involved in these type of things because I see their value, and I'm still struggling. I hop on, and after 5 minutes, I'm like, they're lying to me. They're full of crap. It's rah, rah, rah cheerleading stuff. I know everything they're saying. And just like when I was an engineer, just leave me alone and let me do my job. I'm out of here. So you two guys are very experienced in the corporate business side of things. You've led teams at huge places and a lot of people reporting to you. You've set strategies. So I guess where we can start is obvious question. Do you think the attitude that I carry hurts my career? Let's start there. Yeah.
100%.
Right. To my own detriment.
I had that attitude, and I think it held me back. Like, so
Really?
I hear you. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, okay. So you can relate.
Yeah.
So, because so here's an interesting dynamic here between the two guests. I think Scott has more of an engineering opsy background, where Mike is, I think, more businessy. Although Mike was very technical, mechanical engineer. So Mike, that surprised me when I met you, that you actually have a really technical background. So maybe I'm underselling your technical chops. I definitely am. Mike, did you ever have that feeling early on of like, ugh, corporate Kool-Aid, these people are lying, this is all nonsense, or not really?
Yeah, I think for me, like I remember the first all hands I went to as an employee of a company. I was working at Sybase, the database company that essentially made Oracle what it is today. We sat in an all hands. I think what was the guy's? I forget what the CEO's name. Mitchell Hertzner. I forget what the guy's. I forget what his name was. I probably should remember that. He stood up and he was addressing the company, and I remember I just got a new pager that'll date it. And I sat there as a 22-year-old playing with my beeper the whole time, and I was listening to him, and then I was barely listening though. I was kind of just fidgeting. That's for people who know me. I've got a weird brain, and so I need to have things to play with. My boss called me out for it, and then called me into her office and said, "You weren't paying attention. Like, you should pay attention." And then I recounted to her. I'm like, "No, I was paying attention." He basically said, and then I went through and summarized it. And I said that, and then my conclusion was, he wasn't really being truthful, because he was simultaneously saying, that things were good while he was signaling we were weak in one area. And then, we had layoffs a couple of weeks later. And so to me, that it reinforced, a lot of what you're feeling, right? When you hear people talk, I think you're skeptical. And then I went through most of my career, like early career, being some combination of bored or judgmental in these types of settings, where either I thought the information was irrelevant, bored, or I was looking for all of the things that they were wrong about, judgmental. And in being that way, I will tell you that I did not connect with what they were trying to do until I was in middle management. And then for me, the light bulb wasn't because somebody said something that sparked interest or understanding. I was forced to put together the material that showed on one of the slides. And then I had to make the story, and then I had to watch my story be bastardized on a stage, because what that person said was not what I had coached them to say. And so I sat there in nightmarish disbelief as my words were twisted. And then I was like, oh, this is harder than it seems. And so then from there, I think I had a different perspective. And I'll wrap my monologue here. I've been on the other side, where I've been the talking person who's had to deliver these things. And I've looked with anguish upon, 70% of the audience as they look at me with those saucer eyes, and you're like, wow, they want to be anywhere but here. So I've come full circle, right? So I understand why you have to stand up and say things. I understand what makes you more effective and what makes you less effective. And I understand what it's like to listen to those things as a brash young individual who knows everything, like my kids.
Payback.
And to be clear, I have no recollection of ever having this feeling when Mike is speaking. And I mean that because, and so I'm getting a little ahead of myself, you're such an engaging, I know we all say storyteller, right? But you pull me in and the rest of us in with real stuff, I think, that resonates with people. So when you said earlier, I wrote something down. You said they're trying, connect with what they're trying to do. And then you talked about the thing and like, what are they trying to do? Because from my perspective, it seems like they kind of seem like cheerleaders, and they're trying to get us excited about something. But I feel like what they're saying is obvious. We all know, like, oh yes, we have to do things and grow and work hard. And so when I go to those time and time again, I'm like, dude, it's why I'm here. So like, why do I have to get on these things and spend an hour and a half of valuable time listening to you tell me what to me seems obvious? We need to break down silos. Like, they all say the same thing, right? So what is the thing they're trying to do? What is the thing on their side of the table that I'm like, this is so obvious? Like, is it not obvious to most people, which is why they have to do this, or is it just part of their job? What is that thing that they're throwing at us?
Well,
The Kool-Aid thing.
I have an opinion. I'll let Scott maybe let Scott talk
Scott
first.
go first.
I'm gonna poison the well here if I jump in.
So there are important themes here. It is important to not paint with too broad a brush, right? Some companies, some corporate cultures do a better job at it than others. I think the ones where we've seen it done well stand out because they are exceptional. The one thing that comes to mind from the talk so far is the time that you realize you don't really care about attending the company meeting that quarter. That's a sign that your patience has been exhausted, that your respect, you have not been given the respect of being intelligent and be able to process what you're being told, right? And that's usually the sign of getting your resume together, right? When you're at that point. Wow. And Mike and I have some shared corporate heritage, so I think Mike knows exactly what I'm talking about. At the risk of making this the Mikey B pylon hour, I do want to totally agree with Andy's comments, Mike. I mean, you are a
Scott. We can't do this. We can't pump him up the whole hour. I mean, he deserves it, but I see what's going to happen here.
So this is we'll turn this into actionable feedback for anybody who's in a leadership position or wants to aspire to be a leadership position. The reason Mike is an effective communicator is because he pays very close attention to what he's trying to communicate and what's going to be heard. Right? What you say isn't always what people hear. And so you need to craft what you're saying and how you say it in a way that it's going to hit with the majority of your audience. So, and that is a skill. It can be learned. Some people have it more naturally than others.
So I was going to start basically where you started, Scott. I think many people are just not that gifted at putting together the presentations. I think a lot of the speakers are up there reluctantly. They're there because they have to be. There's some expectation. There's some template. Maybe some other team has crafted the message.
Yeah.
And they are up there to deliver. Typically these happen around earnings. And so there's a set of numbers that they want to, go and explain. And the explanation is usually some derivative of what's generated for analysts and Wall Street and whatever. And so what they end up with is this kind of watered down explanation of, what's going on, what's the performance and how do you put that into some context that's usually crafted for a non-employee audience first. Mm-hmm. So the result is bland. And it's not hard to imagine why it doesn't connect with the employees. You put together a message that's aimed for non-employees and then you're shocked when it doesn't land with employees. Like that's kind of by design, right? And the things that Wall Street cares about are different than the things that employees care about. And then I think when you go through a number of handlers, whether it's a speech writer or someone who crafts the presentation and then someone who coaches you on whatever your speaking points are going to be, if you outsource too much of that, you lose the authenticity and then there's no connection with the audience. The thing that I do that's different, and all false humility aside, when I get up, you're getting an authentic representation of who I am and what I believe in. And I've been mortified when I've been a speaker, being the one who has to deliver that message every quarter is awful because it feels repetitive and it feels like, that if I'll tell you, I guess I'm gonna get personal on this. When I get up and present, I have an eidetic memory. I have a photographic memory. So I remember everything not everything strictly speaking, but a crazy percentage of things that go on, I remember.
Blessing and a curse.
And so when I go up and deliver a message and then I deliver the same message or some derivative of it again to an audience where some of the people were there the first time, it is mortifying to me because I'm like, I don't want to be the guy that says the same thing every time. Yeah. And when I was in the audience, I heard, and the thing that turned me off was that I acted like they were talking to me. And I'm like, I've already heard this. I don't need you to tell me again. Yeah. And then when I was in that leadership position, I realized that my audience isn't the 30% that heard it and remembered it from the first time. It was the 70% who hadn't. And once I realized that, I'm like, oh, I'm actually not speaking to the people that know. I'm speaking to people who either didn't put the time in or who are absent or who didn't care enough. I'm trying to get them on board.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, oh, I became a little bit more forgiving. And then repetition actually makes sense. And we've all heard the things. You got to repeat it n number of times. I don't know what the current lore is, but like whatever the number of times is. And so I started to kind of change my view. Now, just to be clear, I don't let people off the hook when they're not necessarily connecting with their audience. I still think that's like the biggest problem. But I think the second problem is that not everybody is the primary audience for every message. And then what you got to do is figure out what are the parts you are going to take away, which then gets into like at some point we'll transition to some other set of questions. But like the big, to me, the next thing you got to answer is sort of what's the goal? Like if you could deliver, let's say you could guarantee 100% understanding, like what's the outcome? And I actually think there's a disconnect or a disagreement or a lack of understanding of many people of what that goal ought to be. And the thing that makes me different is that I have a very different point of view on what makes it effective versus like reporting the numbers or explaining the stock movement or, walking through the corporate 4 pillars of boredom, or whatever.
So why would leadership have the Wall Street conversation with the internal company audience where Wall Street isn't participating in the meeting? Is that a fair question? Like, it's a weird thing, right? This episode of The Art of Network Engineering is sponsored by Meter. Meter delivers network infrastructure for the enterprise because every organization deserves seamless connectivity. Whether you have a large team of network engineers or an IT team of one, Meter makes it simple to get online and stay online. Meter provides a full-stack integrated platform that combines hardware, software, deployment, and support, so enterprises can ensure their networks have the performance, security, and reliability they need without the inefficiencies of juggling multiple vendors. It's enterprise networking reimagined, giving IT teams the ability to spend less time managing complexity and more time driving business strategy. Go to meter.com/A1 to book a demo now. That's meter.com/AONE. Now back to the show.
I think it's a fair question. I will tell you, I think there's a fundamental disconnect between many executive teams and employees. I think what executive teams are compensated extremely heavily on stock, and they look and they're like, shareholder value. It's effectively, it's a scoreboard. Employees are participating in it. But riddle me this, Batman, who's really participating in that stock? It's not like the average employee. That's not to say that employees don't have equity. They do, but it's not equitably distributed.
Not leverage like execs are. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that message, like right. Telling a set of people who are spending their nights and weekends working for a company and telling them that like the reason you do it is because our shareholders win. Most of that is us standing up here and then a group of nondescript people that drive budgeting decisions for the company. Like we have to lay off some number of people. Like I don't actually, as a employee, I don't actually care if they do well.
This isn't convincing me to join these calls. This is getting worse for me.
This is the disconnect, though. So I think when you craft a message that's like the shareholders win, therefore we care, I just think that falls flat for an audience that is not huge shareholders. I think you got to tap into something else. That's not motivating. I've watched senior execs at companies that rhyme with Runiper talk about the reason that you guys should be excited is that you're going to move the stock from this to that. And I'm like what so that you can make, 8 million this year? Like that's not the list. That's on the list of things I care about. That's not super high. And so the audience tunes out because you're just at that point, you were so out of touch that and then that's like the reactions you're talking about. Like to me, if you don't talk about something that matters to me, then if it's not intellectually interesting, and reading out numbers isn't, so it's not intellectually interesting and it's not relevant, then what am I going to do? I know Scott was trying to jump in there.
I wonder, so one of you asked why this behavior exists. Why do we keep doing it this way? And two things come to mind. One, why am I using the material that I used to read out to the street in the company meeting? I've already prepared it. I'm lazy. Why not just repurpose it? That's an oversimplification, but there's something to that, right? And then why the fixation on, hey, this is what you guys are going to do to move the stock price up and to the right. Don't move it in the other direction. I do feel like that's momentum from the 90s and early aughts, where that's how I landed at a couple different jobs with, big stock offerings, right? That, again, didn't make me, as highly leveraged as a CXO, into the early aughts. That did motivate me, and that became less and less and less, into the tens and beyond. But I feel like there's momentum there, and it's the way we've always done it. And I think there's something to that too.
I agree. I think it raises a question though, like what ought to be the purpose of these?
Yes, so it begs the question.
Yeah. Like I think corporate communication is super important. Like I'm very pro, and I'm actually fine like dedicating some percentage of the conversation to the things that, because there is a part of the population that cares about that stuff. Sure. Like I think it's fine. I just don't think it can be the only thing that you talk about. In my mind, like when I think about, if I'm addressing a large audience, as a leader, what do I want the behavior to be? Let me create two kind of competing cultures, right? There's many different versions, but I'm going to put two up. One is command and control, right? Everything is top down. So when I make a decision as a CEO, I'm going to push that decision down. I care a lot about how that decision is then amplified through the organization. And so my job is to give the order. Their job is to then repeat the order. The job below that is to execute the order, and then we're good. I think when you do that, right, then what you'll do is you'll signal it at all hands meetings, essentially, here's the order, right? We're going to reduce our OpEx. We are going to, improve our customer satisfaction. Like those are essentially, it's top down. And then you're going to give the marching orders, and then they're going to be repeated, 25 times until everybody, is on message. A different way to think about it, though, is where autonomy is distributed. Think of it, and here I think I've talked to Andy. I've shown you videos on this, but look up a video, like for anyone listening, go to YouTube and look up athletes doing the same thing at the same time. And you watch these videos, and it's crazy. Like it's like you get a basketball clip, and all 5 players literally take the same step at exactly the same moment. And the reason they do that, so it turns out in sports, because things are happening at the speed of sport, you don't have the luxury of somebody calling out the play and telling you what to go do. So everybody has to have a common understanding of a couple of things. They have to understand situationally what's going on, and then they have to understand what did they do in that situation.
Yeah.
And then if you can get an organization to operate that way, then as a leader, you can make them, aware of, in these situations, we do whatever. And then here's the situation we're in now. Then you can drive autonomous decision making that's all coordinated. And so in my mind, the real goal, and the reason that I talk differently at all hands, the real goal is to get everybody aware, right? What do we do when? Like, why do we do it? Not what do we do? Why do we do it? Because if they understand the why, then they'll always arrive at the same what, if you do it well enough anyway.
Yeah.
And then 2, what situation are we in? So if you understand kind of why we're doing it, and then you understand what situation we're in, then independently you can apply it to your individual role. And so I'm not telling you here is the thing. I'm telling you here are the conditions, which you might not be always looking at. So 1, it's going to feel a little bit new. And 2, I'm not stripping you of your autonomy by telling you what to do. Like, hey, everybody, we need to, cut down travel expenses this quarter. Or it's really important that we, stop spending money on muffins for our morning meetings. And that was literally a message that I got at an all hands one time, not even joking.
I think I remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, It was like, it turns out we spent $1 million a year on muffins. And so
$1 million muffins.
It was crazy. So, but instead what I do is I say, look, here's where the market is, these things are happening. When these things happen, we have to go do whatever. And so then, and therefore it's super important that we operate with velocity, or maybe it's super important that we nail customer experience. And that means these kinds of examples. Then as an individual, you can internalize that and you can translate it to what it is you're doing. I think that message, one, it's more interesting because it's not the normal corporate speak. 2, it actually does tell you something you didn't already know, which is here's the condition and here's how we interpret that condition. And then 3, you can apply it on your own. So you leave thinking, I know a thing that I can go use. So it doesn't feel like there's this gap, this canyon, between what someone's saying and then what I'm doing, 5 minutes later when I leave. Like that's the gap. And in my opinion, that's where people should spend their time on corporate communications. Maybe you're not going to spend 100% of your time that way. Fair. But I think you can spend 80% of that time and you can still cover the numbers because you have to cover the numbers.
I think you just identified why I love your leadership, meetings, because like the sports. So I've watched sports, off and on throughout my entire life, and I never noticed that all people moving at the same time until you mention it. And then when I see it and then you translate it to business, you're like, oh, and then I can see a little more clearly, I think, what you've been doing over the years I've known you, which is trying to get everybody to connect with the why, singular mission, so that we can move together and do things. Because if we're fighting each other and siloed and blah, 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 we're not going to be able to accomplish missions. But that's a very unique, I don't know, in the 4 or 5 Fortune, whatever companies I worked for attending these things, that's a very different, and maybe I'm working at the wrong places in the past, but most of it has been the, what you've talked about, talking about financial stuff that just doesn't resonate with me. Even if I'm on the employee stock purchase plan and whatever, like it's not a huge part of my compensation. And yes, I want us to succeed, but it just kind of, drones, I lose it. What I'd like network engineers to walk away with, or technical people at the end of this conversation, is like, what is business value? And then how can they translate their technical work to business value? I don't know if that's the right framing for the rest of the conversation, but I'm looking at myself and I'm like, how can I? Yeah. But see, here's where I get stuck. If what I've learned so far is true, and that what the business values is stock price, shareholder value, Wall Street stuff, and then me as a technical person, it's not, which again is why I've resonated so much with Mike over the years, is it's not even customer centric. It's not about customer experience. It's not about delivering outcomes. It's how can we, I don't know, I'm a cynic, right? Sometimes, like, how can we cook the books to look better for Wall Street, which isn't even real value. It's just nonsense. So I'm probably not even saying things that are smart here for myself or my career, but how can a technical person, what is business value? Because it has to be more than just we have to make the street happy. I know that's the system we're in and capitalism, but I mean, is that really it? Like, should my whole thing be, I got to show them how we can push the stock price up? Because it seems so shallow.
We don't have, all weekend to record, right? So there's only so much we can cover here.
Right.
Let me throw this out.
Low-hanging fruit, Scott, right? Like, the average technical person, what is important to you guys when you're running organizations, and how can we help?
Well, so let me throw out the journey as an engineer, learning the hard way that the numbers really are important. And it doesn't have to be corporate stock performance. It's really just kind of understanding bits and bytes along the way. And I'll tell a short version of the journey here, where, I early in my career, probably the first 15 years, I really just chased the tech. That was what was most interesting to me. I did not want to talk to anybody about anything that was accounting related or cost related or anything. I remember a pivotal moment, I think, when I was a TAC engineer, learning what COGS is, cost of goods and services. And it's like, okay, somebody is really keeping track of what it costs to build and deliver something. And there's also a price that's paid for it. And that gap in the middle is called margin. So that was like okay, I probably need to know more about this, but I wasn't excited about it. I'm going to say something that I won't say very often. I want you to both listen very carefully. Being in a sales organization really taught me what the numbers are all about. And, as an SE,
sales made you smarter.
Are you going to do this to me again? Are you putting other words in my mouth like I'm anti-AI? Are we going to have that conversation? It broadened my perspective at a minimum. Maybe it even made me smarter too. But, I think for many systems engineers or sales engineers, right? You want to feel that you are special, that the rules do not apply to you. I'm not a sales guy. I'm an SE. Well, guess what? You all are on the same team, and you do need to learn what the moves are together. You need to have the no-look pass. You need to be able to read the defense and call the play inaudibly. I'll go there with that analogy. But I had a couple sales partners, three guys come to mind in particular. One at Cisco, who really taught me what a regular cadence of the pipeline looked like. We had calls on Mondays and Fridays, and the pressure was put on every individual account manager for their opportunities and where things are coming from. And understanding that revenue side of things really helps you see, okay, the customer really has to be careful on what they spend. You know, they're not just going to donate their funds because they love your routers, right? There has to be real value in what you deliver. And I'd say the last point in that journey for me, or the most recent point, that's resulted in me running my own businesses. And now nobody's responsible for it but me. And all the mechanics of, okay, what does the bank account look like? How much do I have to pay QuickBooks a month? Why can't I get my money right away? You know, between net 30 and net 60 and net 90 and all these other terms that are mechanics of doing business. I think the earlier you learn these things in your career, even as a technical person, the better perspective you're going to be able to have. You don't have to be an accountant. You don't have to be a salesperson, but you know, Mike said it made me smarter. Okay, I'll go with that. He actually didn't say that. He asked me if it made me smarter. But those have been some significant points for me as primarily a technical contributor on understanding that other side of the business and learning that I shouldn't run away from it.
Yeah, I think most leadership teams would tell you that there's only like two roles in the company. You're either building stuff or you're selling stuff. And so the question is like, you know, and if you're not doing one of those things and you're helping somebody else do that thing more efficiently, I think people need to be, you know, clear about what your company's trying to do. You do need to have some idea of how it maps to you, because some of those things that are happening at a macro level, they may take time, but they will work their way down into what you're trying to do. Companies that are in growth phase, you know, will typically try to move with velocity. Right. And that means that you're going to have to execute things efficiently and quickly. You know, dealing with growth is actually hard because you never move faster than when you're growing. You don't have time to do things. Things break at scale and it's not always obvious. You know, when you're listening and you hear your company trying to grow, questions you might ask, you know, are really around how are the systems oriented that make us go faster. If you're a networking person, it'll tell you like how, you know, maybe you need to think through capacity planning. Maybe you need to think through procedurally, how are we going to, you know, handle changes inside that support lines of business. Maybe the discussion is about one particular line of business over another. And you know that's going to be a student body left. You're going to shift everything to support that business, in which case understanding, you know, what that business is going through. Are they growing? Are they missing targets? In which case they're going to be under a little bit more pressure. That's going to tell you that you need to, you know, lead with empathy. If they're really aggressive, then you're going to need to lead with, you know, how do we close it, right? If they're aspirational, hey, everybody, we're launching a new initiative around AI, you know, haven't quite figured out how to monetize it, then you know that there's going to be pressure on top. They're going to say, let's move quickly. And then underneath, what they're going to tell you is all they see is obstacles. And so if you're supporting them, you know, do you align to the top? Let me feed into the art of the possible. Or do you align with the bottom? I see the same, you know, constraints and bottlenecks and obstacles coming, but here's how we're going to solve them together. I think it can prepare how you talk, the questions that you ask, maybe even how you know, handle yourself in a meeting or across a deliverable. But I think there's signals everywhere that are telling you, you know, how people are going to operate, what they're going to key on. And then here's the other piece. I think if you're in these roles, a lot of times you'll have ideas because you're closer to the specifics. And many people have had like an idea that they wanted to be supported in some way. It could be a big idea, it could be a small idea, but I just want it to be supported. Like I want to know, I want my management chain, I want them to think it's important. Well, if you want to make it important to them, then you have to explain it in terms that matter to the people that they have to explain things to. It's not about putting it in the terms that your boss's boss cares about. It's in terms that your boss's boss's boss cares about, because that's what they have to plug into. And so if they're talking all about, you know, speed and velocity, and you're talking all about, I don't know, scale, like those are two different languages. If they're talking about, you know, how do we become more efficient, and you're talking about this is really technically cool, like there's a disconnect. And so you're not going to get your ideas supported. And then here's like the real rub. And this is the reason, Andy, I think it hurts people's careers, is like chances are you're sitting on some good idea. You have some contribution to make, and it's objectively a good contribution. The company is objectively better as a result. If people don't understand it, then you're not going to reap the rewards of the work that you did. And part of this whole corporate agreement that we're in, I mean, we should be clear. It's a job, man. It's a job.
Yeah.
Your company will not love you back.
Yep.
but they will reward you as you feed into it. And so you should reap those rewards. But if you're incapable of expressing your idea or your value or whatever in terms that hit home, then you're not you don't get your side of the equation. Like they take advantage of your work regardless. But if they don't value it, they're not going to reward it. Like I just think people need to get better at how they connect these things. Because at the end of the day, Scott said he joined sales for a bit. I'll tell you this is in a little cold water here for everybody. Everyone's in sales. You're selling an idea. You're selling the thing you want to go do. You're selling your progress. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone is in sales. And some people know it and other people don't. And simply saying that, I'm not going to play that game, that doesn't mean the game's not being played. And I'm not talking about over promotion and whatever else, but you do got to represent your ideas in the marketplace of ideas.
Yep.
And if you choose not to participate in that, it's kind of on you, right? And then you can't complain if you don't get what you want, if you're not advocating. Now, again, I want to be really careful though. I think people who manage up, that's all they do. That's annoying. There's got to be some substance. You got to do the work, right? Yes. But just because somebody abuses the managing up thing doesn't mean that no one else should participate in making people aware of the value you're driving. There's a space in between, and I think people need to find that space.
I think you just hit it for me, which was you got to get them to understand the benefits of your idea in their terms. What is important to them, which is what Yvonne has talked about in other places. You have to join these conversations, suffer through the drudgery of it, because that's how it feels a lot of times, to understand what they value so that then you can align your ideas and try to get them to understand it. I have failed at this even recently with some very good ideas that I know would move the needle, and I haven't spent the time, been patient enough, and advocated strongly enough for the certain ideas to convince the person on the other end of this exchange of the value. They just don't see it, or they see it a different way. I know I'm right. I know that this is going to be amazing. I have proof, but the answer, doesn't go my way. And I have to admit that I'm just not explaining it in their terms clearly enough to show them. If they could see what I see, I mean, Mike, this goes back to the biases and all the stuff you've, focused on for years. They can't even hear what I'm saying, let alone. So there's a lot there. I wanted to circle back to one thing you said. We're either building stuff or selling stuff. What it made me think of is, software is rev gen, network, ops is like a call center, right? So I feel like networking just kind of gets the cold shoulder, just in general, right? Your software people, so I don't know if that's true, because there are network companies making money and good margins and all that stuff. But when you say building stuff, do you include network infrastructure in that, or are you talking about software? Because I don't know if networking has been kicked to the curb because how cloud made everything push button easy, and people just expect infrastructure to just be on electricity and water out of a faucet, right? When you say build stuff, are we talking network infrastructure, or are network engineers irrelevant in the build stuff part?
Depends on the role.
I don't know.
Depends on the role, right? So I think if IT is so the way to think about it, if the network goes down, does the company suffer? If the company is not suffering, then you are an enabler, and you have to just acknowledge that you're an enabler. In that case, what they're going to be looking for is efficiency. They're going to be looking for, what they want is reliability. We've talked about this in the past. The thing, your thing matters if people are, and look, every network engineer, when the network goes down, you all hear about it. It's not like it's down for 3 hours and then someone's like, oh my gosh, the network is down. We had no idea. When the network goes down, it's critical.
What company wouldn't suffer when the network goes down today? It is part of the ship, part of the crew, right? It's, regardless of the respect, right? I would layer on is it a cost center or a revenue generation center? Right.
That's kind of where I'm going. The way the internal, the way we think about it is is IT or the network part of the product?
Right.
If it's part of the product, if the network goes down and the company stops making money, then there's one treatment. And if it goes down and everyone stops being productive, there's another treatment. Yeah. And I think you got to understand both those sides, because it's going to tell you a little bit about tolerance for doing different things. If you're part of the product, then there's way less tolerance. There's no risk because you can't bring the product down. But if you can drive some incremental value, customer does something better, maybe you get a faster response on something, maybe they work, better than they otherwise would have. You're going to find a very receptive audience but you got to put it in terms that whoever you're talking to understands. Yeah. On the enablement side, then it's going to be like, look, if it works, don't touch it. Like there's risk aversion, there's, budgets matter
fragility.
A lot.
Yeah.
And so if you can deliver some efficiency, because, it's an allocation model, there's never enough money. If you can deliver efficiency, like, oh my gosh, like that's worth a lot, because it opens up like a funding opportunity cost that or it removes one. So things like that matter. So just, if you don't know what side you're on, then you have a fighting chance to understand how you position your ideas or what's going to be important. And then as you assess, one of the things that we haven't talked about, but like people will use these all hands meetings, they'll use the corporate jargon, they'll use all of this to assess, is their role important, right? Or is my role safe? And I think it'll tell you, like, if you're part of the product and your product is growing, then they're going to pour more money. If you're part of the product and your product is in decline, then what they're going to do is look to pare back. And so that'll give you a feel for the health of the thing you're working on. If you're on the enablement side and the company is growing, like the company, not like in terms of people, then the thing that you do is super important. Or if you're on the enablement side and the company is, contracting because the products aren't doing well, then what they're going to do is reduce the cost allocations. And so then you should be a little bit worried. But I think you can actually read the signals in these all hands or in the corporate communications to get a feel for which direction it's going. Yeah. And then that'll, either feed your fears or maybe remove them depending on where you are. But that's another reason I would pay attention.
I'm having like these self-realizations as you're talking, which is why I love these. I do these for me, I guess, because I learned so much, and I guess we pull other people along. But when I worked at an ISP, the network was the product. Yeah. We were providing connectivity. That was the product. When I went somewhere else, the applications were the product. And as soon as application connectivity broke or something went sideways, it's the network, and then it was our whole job. And that's the trope. It's, it's not the network. That's our whole job, is trying to prove it's not the network. So I've never, at an ISP, I felt like we were part of the product and maybe a little more valued, even though it didn't pay great. In other places that paid better, the network was just an assumption, like it should work and it should be fine. Even though trade-offs were made, and I've been in those meetings where they made trade-offs financially because they didn't want to build in the resiliency that they could have because of reasons that are usually dollars. But I feel like people that I've talked to that are in operations, I don't know if they feel like the network is part of the product. It's an assumed thing that's there. It's like roads, and it better freaking work. And if it doesn't, it's you're in deep doo-doo. So I kind of like what you're saying there, the framing, but I don't know. The network seems like an assumption, and I don't see places that build applications and charge access to those applications valuing connecting the network and the product. It's just, so I'm just repeating myself.
It's a thing, there is some invisibility, right? That's happened over the decades, right? And it's not any less critical to service delivery and application delivery. But a lot's become assumed, and a lot of new and career folks want to go be the cool kids, and there are other things that are cooler now. For a while, there was that giant sucking sound that was going to the cloud providers, right? And now AI and, attracting folks into that. These are the shiny objects that we've seen over the last couple decades. So it's not the same as it was when all of us entered, into this. And we won't embarrass anybody or call out gray beard hair any more than anyone else. So.
I think it's worth pointing out that some of this stuff is cyclical. So even things like power, previously were not thought about, and today power is super thought about. So I do think that what people will pay attention to is the bottleneck. Yeah. And when networks become a bottleneck, then it'll become interesting again. I don't think networking is when people say it's plumbing, there's sort of this belief that it's it's unseen and maybe it's never going to resurface. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think we're going to, in the AI space, for instance, I think you're going to see distributed clusters, which is going to bring and if you thought reliability was important for applications, go and spend a few hundred million on some GPUs and then let the network go down and see how people feel about it. So
go ahead and really grok what is RDMA, remote direct memory access. And when you think about what kind of network infrastructure do I need to fake this GPU out into thinking that memory that's in Oklahoma is really in New Jersey, the network's going to be important.
Yeah. So I think some of this stuff, I mean, I guess, so people who listen to this and have an existential crisis because they're relegated to the plumbing, I would just say, not everybody cares about plumbing, but the people who do really care about it. And so I do think it's a hot space. And in the networking industry, frankly, we haven't had this much action in probably since cloud was being started. It's been, probably 16, 17 years since we've seen this kind of movement.
Can I throw a proof point out there?
Please. Yeah.
In the world of software eats the world, thank you, Mark Andreessen. Jensen has come along and made hardware cool again. So I don't think these things are unrelated, right? The GPU as the next really important piece of hardware. Well, we don't have to get into the bubble or no bubble conversation. I think technically it stands on its own that we've seen now that network hardware is important again. And I think we're going to continue to see that bubble up, like Mike said.
So what I'm coming away with a bit, and it's where we started, and it kind of made me sad, but I think it's the truth. Well,
no sad, Andy. We don't want to sad, Andy.
Well, no, it's the saying, follow the money. So I came into networking before cloud blew up. And then when cloud happened and everybody wanted to go to cloud, all my friends who went into cloud did well. They followed the money. They were paying attention to what the business valued, which was faster time to deployment. And the cloud delivered that. And people that went cloud and learned all that stuff did really well in their career. I didn't, for reasons. I think I'm seeing that cycle now. Well, we all are in AI. Like to your point, Scott and Mike, the network is becoming more important. So if I was paying attention and a little more, I don't know, whatever, when I wasn't paying attention, like Mike has said things about seeing around the corner. So if I saw cloud coming, I probably would have jumped on it early and capitalized on it. With AI, I think we're at a point now, if I were an operator, I'd probably be digging into Rocky V2 and RDMA and all the AI related bits, because follow the money. I don't know if people know what CAGR is. I learned it from Mike, but like the annual growth rate. And if data centers like 8%, whatever the hell it is, AI is like 55. I don't know if we've ever seen CAGR this high, but for what it means for a listener, and I might be misquoting numbers, is like there's never been as much growth, at least that I've ever known in the past 6 years I've been in the business side, for AI. So if we're following the money, and AI is where the money is now and will probably be going for a while, maybe AI networking is what you should be studying and getting into. Like automation is going to be there. That's important, right? But like some of these things are becoming assumed. Yes, you should know some cloud. Yes, you should know some automation. But AI networking is its whole own, I'm still trying to learn it, right? It's its whole own set of things, and it's super complicated. And that's before you even get to the UEC's new transport layer, which is an 800-page white paper. So like none of this is easy, but we don't do it because it's easy. So I was half joking, but like if you follow the money, maybe the AI networking is where, you said, like, people always ask me, what should I do? I want to get in. And like, you throw some certifications around, you throw some skills around, learn Linux, learn Python, learn this, whatever. I don't know if we're at the point where I throw some AI networking type stuff in there, but like AI is not going away, right? You guys can see further down this road than I can. This is like the thing for a while.
It's
right?
Durable. And here's the important part. The money that's being made right now is actually not on AI.
Right.
The money that's being made right now is on shovels for the proverbial gold rush.
Yeah.
When cloud took off, it wasn't the huge moneymaker until 7 or 8 or 10 years later. And then there was a cloud economy that came up. When internet, when you can't argue like, the .com was the peak of internet. No, it wasn't. It was the rise of all the cloud and all the social media companies that came after. The money, yes, there was like this pop of money, but then there was a durable, multi-decade run after that where people became even, crazier well off without having to necessarily be speculative. And what people will conclude now is that, all of the AI money's been made and maybe they take the comment, AI networking, let me go join a startup. What I'm saying is, participate in the startup economy if you want to. That's a different decision. But the skills and the technology are going to be durable, and they're going to feed the next 40 years of technology. And so an investment you make now isn't measured. The worthiness of an investment in time is not measured as, did my company get acquired? Did the stock go up 6x? The measure is going to be, did you generate a 20 or 30 year career using those tools? So the conclusion that people should reach is, yes, invest the time now.
Yep.
Because regardless of your tolerance for risk or whether you're the right place, right time, there's going to be decades that you're going to monetize those skills once we get through this.
And those skills and those shovels that built the internet allowed cloud to come into existence. The reason, not just because of networking, but networking allowed the aggregation of lots of disparate, geographically dispersed resources to come up with this thing called the cloud. And now that 55% CAGR, that's happening so quickly because of connectivity and not just cloud physical resources, but business models. So this layer and everything is additive, like it's super fascinating, right? And I have a buddy, Lenny Giuliano. You might remember his name. I forget how he says it exactly. We should be proud of our profession as networkers, because look at the things we've been able to build, right? And then whether or not Mike stops by your cube and pats you on the back or anything like that, we're doing good work. And it's something you can really take home with you. You can really be proud of it, and you should be.
That would have been a great closing, but I have one more question. Where's all this money going? Like, we know that NVIDIA is making most of it in hardware. So has anybody figured out how to monetize AI? Because it just seems like a bolt-on to products that already exist. So how
NVIDIA
are people
has
making money?
NVIDIA's figured it out.
Because they're selling hardware, correct?
Correct.
There are...
Well, okay, so for the rest of the bajillion people on the planet that aren't selling NVIDIA GPUs, where's the money?
We need an entire other hour to cover.
Yeah,
I will say that that AI is a tool. It's not. It's a vehicle. It's not a destination. And
it's a how, not a what.
Yeah, and the people who will make money off of AI are going to be people who have fairly narrow proprietary data that provides unique value when looked at carefully. And I'll give you two examples. The two examples I love and I use over and over again, so apologies if you've heard them before. I was at Fujitsu years ago, and they had done some work with GE. GE makes the engines on airplanes, and they had built up a microphone, and they would listen to sound behind engines at Heathrow, and they could, based on a baseline of sound, they could detect anomalies in the sound and then use that to identify potential issues in the engine that were otherwise unobservable. Like, wow. That's a crazy good use case. Super, like, hyper focused. No one else has that data. Very real use case. Like, we want people to be alive when they fly. Like, that's a great use case. Another one.
And after they fly. We want them to be alive after they fly.
Indeed. And then the other one I love is like John Deere is one of the most impressive technology companies in the world. People think of them as tractors. I think they would describe themselves as a technology company these days. This is the reason there was all those debates over the last few years about, like, who owns the, like, because they own, like, the software that goes into these big tractors. They're using computer vision to make individual plant by plant watering decisions. So they look, and then based on what the plant looks like, it gives it a unique amount of water. This drives crazy improvements in water utilization, which is really important right now. But also it gives you way better crop yields. So like, that's technology. Like, they have a kind of a unique set of data given how prolific they are in that particular space. And then that allows them to make better decisions. Like, those are two examples where they're going to make money off of AI because they have a use case that's important. They have proprietary data. It's not the big foundational models. It's going to be, get to a narrow use set. You don't need something to be generally useful. You need something to be specifically useful.
Yep.
Software that can extract meaning from proprietary data, I guess, is right. Yeah, that's
specialized model training. And data engineering will be cool again, because as enterprises figure this out and they realize how dirty their data is, right? And that's not a content viewing comment. That's the 17 versions of that one Word doc where I did save as -SFR, my initials, where there's minor variations in that document. I don't want all 17 of that going into my training model, right? I probably don't. There's a lot of data cleanup that needs to happen. And I think to get to where Mike's talking about, that grooming, shaping, fixing, cleaning business is going to be important. And it really is data engineering. It's not data science, right? It's going to be the people who are boots on ground, doing the stuff that the data scientists probably figured out. But like he said, longer episode for another time.
Gentlemen, thank you. It's always a pleasure. I think the takeaway for me is, if you work in a capitalist democracy, which we happen to, maybe find out what's important to the people running the companies, which is probably making money, generating revenue, and however you can help them do that, communicate in a way that they understand, that will compel them to go, oh, that's a good idea. Again, not to make it about automation, but I worked at a place that wanted to move faster. The cloud paradigm pushed that initiative there, and they wanted to have self-service stuff that the old school was like, put in a ticket, wait 6 weeks for a VLAN because we had to put it in a spreadsheet and look and do a maintenance window and a change request. And they just wanted somebody to put something in ServiceNow or whatever we were using and have a self-service portal, because they knew that speed, when you're trying to bring up a new application, you can't wait 6 weeks for a layer 2.
Right.
Like VLAN is just insane, but that's how we were operating. So in a networking context, if you can help your company move faster, maybe that's it. To Mike's point, if you want to get rich, create a software company that has access to proprietary data. It can leverage AI to do some really cool stuff. I'm going to look into that GE Boeing thing you were talking about. That sounds really amazing. Guys, thank you so much for sharing your experience here. I always learn great stuff when I talk to you two. For all things Art of Network Engineering, check out our Linktree /Art of NetEng. Two things I'd like to point out. One is our community. It's all about the journey Discord server, up to about 3,500 people. And again, it's just a place you can go. You don't have to trudge this road alone. Working in tech isn't easy. It's stressful. You have to learn a lot, and the learning never ends. So it's a community of people that help each other out and just hang out and check in with each other. And I've been talking about this for a long time, but I finally got our merch store updated. We now have polo shirts, water bottles, a mug, a polo glass. I will probably be sending these two gentlemen one or two things. I'll be seeing them soon, and maybe I'll bring you some gifts. Not that you want some crappy podcast merch, but I'm going to bring you some stuff, because what else am I going to bring you? I tried to give Mike a Phillies ball cap, but he'd probably throw it in the river. So thanks so much for being here, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Art of Network Engineering podcast.
Hey, folks. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcatcher. You can find us on socials at Art of NetEng, and you can visit Linktree /Art of NetEng for links to all of our content, including the A1 merch store and our virtual community on Discord called It's All About the Journey. You can see our pretty faces on our YouTube channel named The Art of Network Engineering. That's youtube.com /Art of NetEng. Thanks for listening.